Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Microsoft Dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned expert or just starting your journey into the world of Dynamics 365, this is your place to gain insights, learn new tricks, and hear from industry experts. In the world of Dynamics 365, productivity isn't just a buzzword, it's a commitment. Business Central is designed to help you do more with less, making your workday not just efficient, but also impactful. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on September 6th, 2023. Kris. I am hot.
You're outside.
It is hot. Yes, it is hot and humid.
I see birds behind you.
Yes, there's trees, there's birds, there's sun, there's sweat. But another episode with another great guest. And I was so happy to have the conversation about something that I've had conversations with many about, that's starting your own practice with Business Central, as well as productivity and automation tips to have successful implementation or to continue to have efficiency in your implementation. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Ben Cole of ERP Connect.
All right, here we go.
Good. Here we go. Good afternoon, Ben. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I decided to sit outside today. It's first for me. It's a first for me. I think it's a little too hot to be sitting out here, but Kris challenged me to sit outside, so I decided to do so.
Gotta enjoy those last summer days, man.
Yes.
It's going to be in the hundreds here today, so I will not be sitting outside for this one.
It's nice.
It's in the low 90s here today, so I think everyone, if you look closely, you'll probably see sweat dripping from my face shortly. But I'm sitting in the shade, which is
That's
nice.
good, you guys having this nice weather. I mean, I had to turn on the wood pellet for the first time, towards the fall here. So it's getting colder for us, which is interesting.
It's becoming fall here too, but I don't think 90s is nice weather. I think it's a little too warm.
Yeah, I would agree.
I like the fall weather myself with the leaves turning and such. So, but Ben, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I've been looking forward, as with every conversation, looking forward to this conversation. I know that we have a lot of great things to talk about, as always. But before we jump into it, if you would, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of a professional career and professional life, my bread and butter is D365 Business Central. I've been doing it for about 7 years now, basically since Business Central came into the cloud, and specifically worked in public accounting and fintech, a few different companies there before starting my company in 2021. So I've just always had a passion for really saving time and doing things more efficiently. I hate all the, manual repetitive tasks. And one of the things I always just found kind of a knack for was trying to automate and, make my life easier through that. And then kind of transitioning that over to, okay, this is really fun. How can I also do this for clients? And how can I do this in a professional sense as well? Which I think is what always geared me towards technology, just through schooling and all that kind of thing, as well as in my professional life. So just something I've always been passionate about, and excited to both talk about it today and learn from you guys, as well as hopefully you guys learn from me and your audience learns from both of us as well.
No, absolutely. I have so many things I want to talk with you about. I definitely would like to touch upon the productivity and automation, because I think that's something that's important in the world today, and it's a time saver. It gains efficiency, and a number of points that you can bring up. But listening to your history, you've been working with Business Central for 7 years, and then you started your own practice, for lack of better terms. I'm not even certain what to call things these days, because it seems like there's a word for something, and I always use the wrong one. But but you started your own practice in 2021. So to me, you spent your first 5 years within the application. Then you branched off and created your own Business Central partner. I'm curious about that. When you started off with Business Central, how did you start off? What drove you to start your own partnership, I guess you could call it, again? And I'd like to discuss that process as well, and then jump into the productivity and automation, because I know many that try, many that are interested in, and many that have started. And I think it would be important to talk about what that process is like. It's not always as easy as it seems. So I would like to hear from your point of view, all of that. See, I load all this stuff on. It would just give you a long time to talk so I can sit here and sweat.
Sounds good. Yeah, in terms of kind of how did I get into Business Central, right? I think it was a mix of right place, right time, and having kind of the willingness and the ability to be flexible and say, yeah, let's jump into something that's unknown, right? So before starting on Business Central, I was doing Dynamics GP implementation support, break fix, go out to the client site, like whatever they needed, right? Need to implement a module, great, I'm out there, I'm helping implement. So it was really just working at a larger partner at the time. They'd sign a deal, 50, 100, 150,000 bucks. They'd say, slap it on my desk, hey Ben, this is your GP project, go and implement it, go support it, go do whatever is in the statement of work. Okay, great. Just kind of doing that boots on the ground type work. And then at one point, the company I was working for said, hey, we got a few guys who are doing nav. We're going to start exploring this whole BC thing. At that point, it was mixing up between a handful of different names. I think this was before they even decided to call it Business Central at the time, right? So a lot of unknowns, and it was more so the team was building up in Dallas. So that's why I say right spot, right time. Right, kind of the leadership behind it was all in Dallas. We're building out the team in Dallas. This is when everybody's still in the office, so easier to float ideas by each other, I would say. Right, people are just walking around and, hey Ben, you have any interest in the cloud? You want to do Business Central? I don't even know what that is. Sure, let's take a look at it. Right, and at that point, right, I knew GP wasn't what I wanted to do for the next, 20 years. So I was looking for something new as well. And, the cloud is where everything's going, and it's a lot more innovative, in my opinion, right? And there, whether it seems like people are saying different things all the time, whether GP is being sunset or ending support or, whatever. I still think, if you're on it, it's probably a good product. I wouldn't implement it if you're not on anything. But, there'll always be people that will support GP from a consulting standpoint, right? I just didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to do something new, and I wanted to get into the BC space. Just kind of growing up with, I would say, a rapid technology evolution, right? I'm just the type of guy who's going to get your hands in there, get it dirty, plug it in and just figure out how it works, right? I don't like, reading the user manual unless I get stuck. I like to learn by doing things hand-on. I feel like a lot of what you see in the cloud and a lot of people working with it kind of have that mentality, right? And a lot of people that I work with do as well. Like, I don't want to sit in the lecture hall learning from the software provider how to do this for 12 hours. I just want to install it and start, clicking buttons in a sandbox. I'll do it in a sandbox, do it in a sandbox and break it until you figure it out. Right. That's kind of
you don't do it in live. I know many people that just click buttons in live.
Only sometimes.
Okay, good.
Do it live.
Just do it live. If you're going to do it live.
Bill O'Reilly style. Do it live.
Yes. So you, before moving to Business Central, it does sound like it was right place at right time. And as you had mentioned, no one knows where GP is going. It's a product that's out there, but many are making the transition. So before you got into Business Central, you did have an ERP background. So you weren't new to implementing ERP software. You were just new to Business Central 7 years ago. How long did you work with GP?
Really just about a year and a half, 2 years. So it was a pretty quick transition.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So you worked with a partner that was implementing GP that picked up Business Central and wanted to do an implementation. And then in 2021, if that's when you started your ERP Connect business, you decided to do it at an interesting time in the world as well. So not only did you transition to go out on your own to work with ERP implementations, in this case Business Central, but you also did it when to me, I think a lot of people in the world were unknown or thinking of the unknown of the future. So you made quite a jump, which is good. And I'm interested to hear what made you go out on your own, and also some of the things that you had to do, or some what you had to go through to in order to start up your own business.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely kind of a scary time, right? There was a lot of uncertainty with everything kind of going on in the world. The market definitely wasn't like at its peak. It wasn't even really a hot market. So a lot of different things go in there. But when I started, it was just me, right? So I started a company like most people do. Some people start it with a co-founder or multiple business partners and things like that. I just pretty much created my own LLC, filed it for myself, and I was just continuing to do like literally the exact same work I was doing previously, but just on my own. So I had kind of the confidence knowing that I knew how to implement, I knew how to support, I knew how to answer the questions and help the clients. So that was never going to be an issue, right? The hardest thing is finding the clients, right? Because at all of my previous roles, like I said earlier, the statements of work and the MSOs and all that stuff, they're just getting slapped on your desk, right? Here's the project, go work on it. So I was like, okay, how do I get the work? If I can get the clients, I know I can do the work, and I know I can do it at a very high quality level that's going to retain these clients for life, hopefully, right? But I know I'm going to do a really good job. So how do I get those first couple clients? And that was the hardest part, right? So everybody starts with one. The hardest part's getting that first client, and then you scale from one client to 5 clients, 5 to 10. We've got over 100 clients now in just about 2.5 years. So it's all part of just
excellent.
It's all just, it's all just part of the grind, right? Like, I didn't know because I'd never been in a sales role. So I was like, here's me trying to wear all hats and go sell stuff. So it was like, number one, I love that social media is very prevalent these days. So it's like, okay, I've got, a couple thousand connections. Let's put out some feelers there. And I think the first thing I did was announce, hey, I'm starting this company just to see if I get any bites. And I was actually very surprised. I think it got it was the most reacted to LinkedIn post I've ever had. I think I had like 400 likes or something. And, a bunch of people are commenting because they want to congratulate you and all that kind of stuff. But what I was really looking for to see if I got any bites to say, oh yeah, we actually need some help, right? Which I got a lot of reactions, and I got 0 people saying, hey, we need help. So I was like, okay, I know that everybody saw it. And what I find to be interesting is that although no one reached out to me, so many seeds were planted that day, right? Because 6 months later, 8 months later, 12 months later is when I really started to see people say, hey, Ben, I remember you said you started your own thing. We actually need some help with Business Central right now, right? So I think just with the lead times and everything with the ERP world, like even when we go to sell $1,000 app, right? It takes some people 3 months to buy it when it's like, hey, you can just swipe your credit card and like, I know you have $1,000, right? So it's like the lead times sometimes are just long.
You hit a key point, and I know Kris and I speak about it often off of the podcast, and I think I mentioned on the podcast before. There's a lot to be said, and sometimes it's difficult to measure that post that you had just made. It's the interactions and the visibility, because not everybody needs ERP software or ERP software assistance on a given time. But it's important to have your name visible, in my opinion, at the time they need it. It's almost like a plumber. I don't need a plumber on a daily basis, but when I have plumbing issues in the house, I need a plumber. Then I have to go similar to what you just said is, oh, I saw this name, or I thought of this. I see this truck driving down the street all the time, or I see a billboard or some advertisement for this plumber. Let me give him a call. So it's important not to get discouraged if you make a post saying I'm starting off on my own and nobody comes. It's important to have that visibility. When you first started working with it, did you work with customers, or did you work with other partners that needed assistance, or did you do a little bit of both?
I did a little bit of both. So I had my very first client was a partner that needed help, right? BC was growing probably the fastest I've seen it growing, right on that like 2021 spot where there was the clients were outpacing how many consultants there were because everybody was still on GP and NAV and stuff like that. So now I think there's a lot more consultants in the industry that are focusing on it. But at the time, there was still a huge shortage of, I'll say, experienced consultants, right? There was a lot of consultants, but everybody was at that same level that I was at back in 2017, where I was just getting into BC, right? There was a lot of those people in 2021 making the transition. So they just needed people that, hey, here's the project, just go implement it because we don't have enough resources. And I was helping out one partner. My second client was actually also a partner. And then after that, all of my clients have been direct end clients. So yeah, that makes it, like, I would say that makes it like a little bit easier. And again, it came through all the relationships that I had previously. Actually, both of the partners that I was working with, the partner wasn't the original partner I was employed by the way. It was two different partners, and people I had worked with had gone over to each individual partner and said, hey, I saw Ben start his own thing and I know we need help. Let's see if he's got some extra hours to subcontract, right? So that was kind of how I got the first clients. But that is the hardest part, right? So if you can line that up before leaving your job or trying to start, you're a step ahead of everybody else, right? And that's probably the biggest thing that I wish I had more of maybe at the time. Again, we were fine and we are still fine, but just to get from that like initial, hey, we just got 10 hours a week for you, to getting up to a full 30, 40 hours a week of actual like billable client work. Again, that's kind of like the hardest part, but anybody kind of trying to build that strategy and do it themselves, those are all things that you plan for, right? And everybody's in a different stage of life and has different like financial standpoints that they're in or health that they're in. But the more kind of savings you have, the less risky it becomes, but then you're still potentially burning your savings. The good thing about a consulting business is it's probably, in my opinion, the cheapest business to start. You file an LLC and you buy a laptop and buy some software, right? And then it's on you to go find the work. So there's not a huge capital investment. And even with kind of the way we work today, right? My whole team is remote, so we don't have any office space. We rent office space when we need to. We had a few folks from my team in town last week and we just rented a WeWork. So, you can rent one of those rooms for a couple $100 a day, and it avoids having to have office space and things like that. So I think, now more than ever, it's honestly easier to start businesses. The hard thing, in my opinion, is always to grow the business. I think anybody can file an LLC right now for $200, right? Anybody can buy a laptop and anybody can put a marketing post out and say, I have a company, right? But what is really hard is growing the company, right? So I know that's probably something that you want to dig into, but
I definitely want to dig into that. But I think you hit on a couple key points there. You set up an LLC, you can minimize the cost by the use of office sharing, and with technology, it does afford you the opportunity to work remote, which saves the customers, because back in the prehistoric days of when I first started, we didn't have the internet. Well, we had the internet, but we didn't have the internet as we know it.
High speed.
We had dial up and such. So you spent a lot of time traveling to customers. Now you can save costs on the implementation, save wear and tear on your body, and get a business going. So you filed an LLC. Did you set up a Microsoft partner ID as well at this point, or are you just strictly consulting?
No, yeah, I set up a partner ID because one of my big things that I believe in is having the framework in place before you need it, because by the time you need it, it's too late, right? Because then you're already so busy that getting everything like stood up is just a disaster. So I got all that framework in place, kind of again, like, while you're mixing your time between not having a full slate of billable work, it's like now's the optimal time to get all this admin stuff figured out. The good thing is, I've implemented ERP for a while, so I knew how to do all the admin stuff on my end, got Business Central up and running for myself to run all my, customer invoicing through and vendor purchase orders and invoices through and stuff like that. So, when people ask me how long does it take to implement Business Central, I'm like, if you have everything in your head and you have all your requirements already in your head, I could do it in a couple hours, right? But the reason it takes 500 hours to do a project sometimes or more is because half of it's requirements gathering and figuring out what the client wants, right? I knew everything in my head that I wanted my business to look like in Business Central, so I could do it really, really quick. So I got all that admin type stuff set up. Again, some of the automation we'll get into, I set that up for myself so that I don't even have to think about it. But at the end of the day, yeah, even with what we're doing now, it's like we're building out products. We've got to build out documentation, videos, materials, like all this kind of stuff that you don't make any money on, right? So it's just you gotta build all this stuff. But I don't, in a year from now, want to get 100 emails that say, hey, show us this stuff, and I don't have enough, people to jump on an hour demo a piece next week, right? I want to have videos and documentation in place to say, hey, perfect, here, go watch the video, here's the documentation. If after that you want to have a call still, here's our link, here's our call. And this is kind of like what our model is for having calls if you buy an app, right? You get the first 30-minute sessions included. And then after that, if you want additional training and stuff like that, we just charge by the hour for it, like a traditional consulting firm. So yeah, a lot of different things, but would definitely recommend getting in the framework in first.
That's nice that you built the foundation for documentation and videos. That's super important.
That is important because that comes into, I think, talking about some of the challenges. So we went through the administrative process that you had to go through. And now you get, the first challenge was finding work. To me, another challenge of this is keeping the work and also scaling. Because in a consulting business, time is finite. If you can have as many resources or as talent, I like to call it now, as many, talented individuals on your team that can do the work, but you still are limited to the number of hours that they can produce during the week. So if you want to scale your business, you need to find ways to effectively scale it. So how do you find the customers? We kind of touched upon, but then now how do you keep the customers? And then how do you scale your business?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take that backwards just because of the way we've scaled has been kind of interesting, right? So I would agree 100% on the scale piece, right? You can only work so many hours in a week. So the only way to scale a consulting business is to hire more people, right? Like at a certain point, you just can't, like there's only a certain amount of hours in a day. So, even if you maxed it out, which is impossible, work 24 hours a day, that is the most amount of money you could ever make and you could ever scale to in a business, right? But if you just cap it off at something more realistic, like 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, right? That's kind of like, in my opinion, the absolute max per person that you're going to do revenue wise, right? So the only way to scale that is to hire more people. The hardest part with people is finding good people, because if you don't hire the right people, then you don't keep the clients, right? So I think one of the things that's made us so successful thus far is, I'm probably biased, but I think that we have one of the most talented and knowledgeable teams out there on Business Central, right? We've got a good mix of kind of technical and development, as well as kind of like functional product manager, implementation manager type folks there. And I would go up to bat our team versus somebody else's team any day of the week, just because I know what we've got. And with that, kind of the proof is in the pudding, right? We have retained every client that we've worked with. The only clients that we're not working with anymore is because I decided to part ways with them, actually. Right. So I know that, if you have high quality people, which is the hardest thing to find right now, like if the client thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, okay, go for it. And we've had people actually do that and say, I'm going to go. And then they come back and they're like, actually, sorry that we ever left. Right. So
that is an important fact that is an important fact that a lot don't realize. They chase after the customers, but sometimes it's important to realize the value of that customer to you, what type of problems that may cause for your team, what type of problems it may cause for you, and the amount of time we just spoke about in a consultancy. The most precious resource to me in a consultancy is time. And that's something that you have that's limited. Yes, you need the team to put together to do the implementations, to do the development. You need the customers, but if you don't have the time to execute with the team or the time to work with these customers, then your business cannot scale and grow. So it is important that I've had that same scenario where people have asked me, when could this be done? And I said, well, we can't look at it for 3 months. And they said, oh, I found this person that said they can start tomorrow. And I said, okay. You don't chase it. You don't try to stress. 3 months later, guess who came back? Mm-hmm. Can you start this now? Because I said, oh, I thought they were going to start it. Well, they didn't. They told me they would, but we had a lot of problems along the way. And I said, I can't start that now because I already filled the schedule again. Like you have to commit soon. And it's important to realize that, you don't have to cause everything to be an emergency.
Even
well.
you have clients, even if you have clients that come in and said, "Hey, we're going to end up hiring internally," and I'm always like, "All right, go in and search, and there's a lot of recruiters out there and stuff like that," and they realize it's hard to find a good one sometimes to look for exactly what they're looking for that does everything, and so it doesn't always plays out right.
Yeah, I think just that whole process of kind of like, I mean, it really comes down to being confident in like your team, right? And one, yourself, because you're always going to start like it's just going to be you. So you have to have that confidence to start, and then having confidence in your team, right? And having the trust in your team that comes with that. Like, I know when we first started in this product realm, right? We're creating IP, we're putting stuff on AppSource. Basically, Joe and I, who Joe does all of our development work, he's the best developer I've ever met in my life, right? So it's full trust on both sides. Like, I know anything we give him, he's going to knock out of the park, and he knows that anything he gives us to actually go work with the clients on like the more functional side, that we're going to knock it out of the park as well, right? So it kind of helps going both ways, because I've seen some other teams sometimes break down when it feels like a certain group of people is doing all the work and they're picking up everybody else's slack, right? That starts to build some resentment in the team, and I've seen been on teams like that in the past, and it just isn't good long term. So again, when people talk to us, I'm like, I don't really want to like grow headcount as fast as we can, because I like having the best people in the right seats, and I think that goes a much longer way than just filling seats to fill seats, right? Like, it's kind of on a invite only basis almost, in terms of like who to hire, because right now, like, if I had the person, and I think that's the other important thing, if somebody came and I knew they were an absolute rock star, we would find a way to make work for them. You know what I mean? Like, we're not hiring to hire, but if the right person said, "Hey, Ben, we've worked together before, and I've got a few of these people in the back of my head, right? And I know they're not looking, but if they ever were, it'd be like, yeah, I know how valuable you are. We'll find a way to cover your salary through some sort of work, because of how absolutely beneficial you'd be to our team." But yeah, having the resources that we have, again, like, it's about not being the smartest person in the room, I think, a lot of times, and knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And like, I think everyone on our team is the best at something, right? But not one person that's just like, and that makes capacity really tough too. If one person's the best at everything, it makes it impossible for other people to do things, right? If you're the best at sales, the best at development, the best at your functional consultant, the best at operations and running things day to day, it becomes an impossible time constraint. So divvying it up, and honestly, there are a lot of people that are good at a lot of things, which does make it hard sometimes when a client calls, because it's like, yeah, I know we could knock this out, but I have that problem a lot of times. Like, it's like, hey, I know how to answer this question, but I shouldn't be the one answering the question, because then the client's going to call me every time they have the question, and then I get overloaded, right? So having that mix is absolutely crucial.
You hit on a couple key points, and we'll go back to the scaling. It is quality, not quantity, because that ass in seat syndrome, as I call it, can be problematic, because if you're just putting a person in there, if it's not the right talent or a team member that you have confidence in, and yes, you can educate team members to become that, but it's just important to make sure you put the right talent in the right seat to make them successful, as well as your implementation successful, and then you can partially grow your team and increase the skills. So, and then also you mentioned, you talked about you and Joe have that confidence in each other, that you can easily trust the work that you give, or the understanding, knowing that you'll get something back. When you decided to scale, we go back to how you scale, when did you decide to scale? And then how do you find the right team member to join you that you have that trust with, so that you can scale your business?
It's kind of been the reverse, right? Find the right people and then scale. Because of the opposite, if you try to start, in my opinion, if I tried to start scaling and then trying to backfill people, it becomes, one, very stressful for everybody on the team, because now, like, if it doesn't pan out, everyone's just overloaded. And I've had like all of these things happen, and I would say like a micro sense, right? So I've not had any like big things where it was like, wow, this is just all too like overwhelming at once. But you talk to people, things fall through, whether it's like trying to hire somebody or a client, right? It happens both ways. You think you're going to close a huge client deal, and then it doesn't come through, and you're like, well, that was my whole next month's of work, so now I got to go find another one of those, right? But really finding the right like team, and then scaling, right? Until Joe and I started working together, there wasn't really like much talk of building out like these enterprise apps for AppSource. I had a few of my own ideas, which we've created, but I never had like this huge grand plan to go create all these apps on AppSource. And now, after working together, he had a lot of things that he brought to the table. I had a few ideas that I brought. We've built these all, and we've got 20 apps now on AppSource. Granted, a lot of them came through things that had been done kind of in the past, and we've tried to say, okay, how do we make this more adoptable for the entire market? And then you get like a beta version out or a 1.0 version out, and then people download it and they just start throwing like a million ideas at you. So that's the hardest part now is, everybody that downloads it is like, hey, this bell and whistle would be cool. And it's like, if we put in every bell and whistle, we're never going to sleep, right?
I love the approach that you had about it's almost like organic, right? So you hire the people, and maybe it's like you're building a business around the people that you have in your team. Does that sound like what you're?
Yeah, and I think
trying
right,
to
like
say?
I would 100% agree with that. And I think everybody has different goals, right? Like some people start businesses because they want to make $1 million, right? Like that's not why I did this. And there's a lot of investment that goes into this type of thing. So the kind of run rate of time to recoup your investment, or kind of all the hours that you put in for free, essentially, because again, you look at a consulting business, I could either be on the phone with a client right now talking to them making money, or I could be doing this kind of stuff or internal stuff, admin stuff, right? So that's, I think, the key point as you start to make that transition is, I know if we do things right, one day it will just naturally follow. But I think if you chase the money and only do it for the money, then that's not going to set yourself up for success. If we continue to do like what we said earlier, find the right people to serve the right clients and keep those clients for a long period of time. If you do all those three things right, naturally you're going to make money off of it, right? So I don't even like, as long as we have enough money to run on a day-to-day basis, I'm not looking at, how do we squeeze an extra margin out of this or that? It's going to come. If you stress about all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, you're not then serving your clients best, because you're taking all this time to try to pinch pennies when really you should be spending that time trying to make your clients happy, because your clients are the biggest source of, one, revenue, and two, likely referrals in the future. Because if you do a really good job for a client, they're going to talk to their friends about you. And I mean, I don't know how many people talk to their friends about ERP, but when they do, over the dinner table or whatever, they're going to come to you because they want to go to a trusted source, right?
You hit on so many points there. I wish I could remember them all. That you hit key points. When I first started this, I had a mentor that was instrumental in helping me start my career. And that's one of the things that they had said to me, similar to what you had just said. Do what you enjoy, do it well, and the money will follow. Right? Because if you, like you had mentioned, if you're chasing the money, you're chasing it for the wrong reason, you have the stress. Where if you're doing it for the passion, right? I call it passion. I'm paraphrasing and simplifying. That comes through with the quality that you do, and you give and you present to whomever you're doing work for. And that in turn makes them happier, as you had stated. So then you can get that additional reference. Like you'd be surprised at the conversations I've had with individuals, like you said, who talks to their friends about ERP. There's always somebody who needs something, or, hey, we're looking for an ERP search. Or, we have a product that does this. And you say, I know somebody who worked with this, similar to with apps. Now it's, somebody brings up, they have a problem. There needs to be they're looking for a solution, and somebody can provide that for you, which is important. And
Even the community, right? Like someone that's worked with you in the community is big enough and small enough at the same time. They can share their experience about the product that they have used, and they take that into consideration as well.
And I think what goes around comes around, right? So a lot of what we're seeing now, having shifted into product, right, is like people will come through and be like, hey, Ben, we want you to implement. And I'm like, I can't do implementations end to end anymore, just because we don't have the time. We have a few that we're still working on. But again, like I say that in the sense of, if somebody came to me with a new $200,000 implementation and said, hey, Ben, implement it, I would have to refer it out because we just don't have the capacity to do it. And it's not really our goal for growth. Our goal for growth is to build great productivity and automation apps and sell those apps on a subscription and make people really happy by improving their processes, right? So when I say what goes around comes around is, any of these deals now, we've built such a big network that I know who's good, and I can feel confident saying, hey, Brad, I can't do that right now for you, but here is, my friend, my colleague, whoever it is, go talk to them and I know they'll take care of you. And then it makes everybody win, right? Because the client still is happy with me because I found them the right spot. Whoever I passed it off to is fine with it because they just got a new client and they get money off of it. And the client's happy because even though I couldn't do it, they've still found somebody who can and who can take care of them. And I know that's going to do a good job. So it's kind of the trifecta, and it's really helping kind of build that out. Because honestly, the biggest asset that you have in any of this is the network that you're working with. And I talked about planting seeds earlier as well. And I think one of the most excited I get is when somebody just buys an app off of our store that never calls us, right? It means that whatever we did, they liked it enough to not talk to anyone and give us money, right? I think that speaks volumes to kind of doing things right, because a lot of times, right, like we're spending so much time doing demos and sales calls and emailing and stuff like that. So, which is all great, and it helps build that funnel. But I always just love, like we had one come through last week. Somebody bought like our top package, which is our unlimited extension license package. And I emailed them just to say thank you, right? Hey, and I always want to know, hey, how'd you find us? Oh, I just looked on your website and I thought you had a lot of cool things that we plugged in and worked. And yeah, we're good. We bought it. We don't like stop bothering us almost. And I was like, oh, my bad. like no, we don't want to talk to you, software provider. We just want to use your apps. I'm like, okay, no, that's cool with me, but it reinforces that like all those nights and weekends you're working on a 40-page user document didn't go to waste, right? Because at the beginning, it's tough to get, or it's really easy to get discouraged at the beginning when you're building, and no one's using. But once people start, it's all like, you gotta build the foundation. Nobody sees you building underground. They only see once you've kind of broken ground, and then they see the beautiful home go up, right? But 90% of the work's making sure that foundation is solid before you can actually go up and scale that. So I always find that to be really interesting. But that's one of the most exciting pieces that we found recently is just, I call them the random downloads, like in our Teams chat, hey, we got another random download. Like those are my favorite.
No, that is great because we spoke about time. So the time that you put in now allows you to scale your business because someone's using that app with what you had put together to support it, where they don't need to take any time from a member of your team. And you also get the revenue from that and the satisfaction knowing that all the hard work that you put in helped make somebody have a better implementation because they were able to find and use an application you have and do it easy enough to where they don't have to speak with you. See, that's where I think in some cases there's some confusion or discussion or different perspectives on an implementation, because if you have something in 2023 where the world of instant gratification, I want it now, you think back to, Willy Wonka and the chocolate factory, I want it now, whatever, she said. For somebody to be able to download, install, and use on their own without having to wait for you says a lot, in my opinion, because they can have a successful implementation. And oftentimes I speak with some that are concerned that, well, I don't want them to install it on their own because I don't want them to have a bad impression because they may do it incorrectly. But if you can put the framework together to where they can do it correctly or enough to know that this is the product for them, then maybe reach out to you, like you said, for additional support later. To me, that's successful.
But you guys remember, I think last year, or maybe a couple of years ago now, where they shared some statistics of decision makers in the workspace. And a lot of those decision makers are coming from a generation that allows them to, they grew up with cell phones or smartphones where I need to do something specific. I want to be able to look at the app source or app store or marketplace and download something to do what I needed to do and pay for that. It's almost like where Business Central going into this extension-based app source, you're getting those generation that is normal to them. I don't need to talk to anybody. I just want to see what's available. I know what I'm looking for. I know my requirements. I just need to download it and play with it and see if it's the right thing to do, if it's right for my business, and install it and don't have to talk to anybody. It's well documented. I can follow the steps and move forward and continue to build the business. And I think that's their focus right there.
And that's like, I love getting on the phone with clients and stuff like that, but I want to talk about the fun stuff. And what I consider the fun stuff is like continuous improvement and stuff like that. Like I don't really want to talk about, hey, this is how you add the user permissions, because that's in the documentation, right? It's like we documented it for a reason. Again, our team's happy to jump on and do that if that's what they want. But what I get excited about is when clients are talking about like the recommendations. And again, we can't do them all, but I always like hearing all the ideas, because a lot of our best features came from people's recommendations of like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Because everyone thinks in their own lane, right? Like I think like a functional consultant, clients think like a client, right? I think a little bit like a client sometimes from a professional service business standpoint, because I run a professional service and a product business in Business Central. So I have that mind frame. But when it comes to like someone manufacturing or distributing physical goods or doing engineer to order, like here's what I think the app should do, but you're going to have 20 other great ideas because you do this every single day and you've been in this industry for 20 years, right? And you know, that industry experience goes a long way. So yeah, I think having the documentation is great. And I point to everyone to that as they get started. And then as well, like people want free, right? So if you send, hey, here's the video I already created and here's the document, they'll usually start with free, right? And then, of course, if they want to do anything else, yeah, we'll jump on the phone with them and we'll charge our hourly rate. But people always want to start with the free. We got the free trial. They could, like, really for the first 30 days, they could download the free trial. They could look at the free documentation. They could look at the free videos. And for 30 days, they could talk to nobody and get an entire product in. They could put it in production if they want. At the end of 30 days, it will stop working, but they could use it for free for 30 days at no charge, right? So I think that's the cool thing, but I would agree with you 100% on the generational aspects of that. Like I would put myself in that realm, right? I remember getting the not the first iPhone that came out, but when I had Verizon. So Verizon didn't have iPhones until like I don't know what year it was, but the first iPhone that Verizon got was the iPhone 4. And as soon as that iPhone 4 came out, you know that I went straight to the store to get that iPhone 4, right? And the funny thing was, you know, before you just had, you know, the 10 key and you're doing your T9 texting and all that kind of stuff. But until you get the iPhone, you didn't have the full keyboard. And the beauty of the iPhone was that I turned it on and I took the user manual and I threw it away, right? Because I just want to start downloading the apps and clicking the buttons. And I think that's what a lot of people are used to now, and they want to go in. Whereas, like, I remember going through all that. Like, my dad was always read the user manual end to end for, you know, your car, right? Like, I'm like, if something breaks, I'll just figure it out, right? I'll take it into the shop. They'll tell me what's wrong, and I'll either fix it myself or I'll have them do it, and I'll pay them to do it, right? So I think that getting in, playing with it, and that's not to say all of our apps can be just plug and play, right? We've got 20, some are plug and play, some you plug in and they work. Some take, you know, two of our biggest ones, I would say, take like 25 to 35 hours to implement. They're a project management solution and a CRM solution. You just can't, there's no plug and play CRM, right? Like it's plug and play in the sense that I can plug it in and start adding leads. But if you want to optimize what you're going to get out of it in terms of all the dashboarding and reporting and lead opportunity to customer, all the checklist tracking, all that kind of stuff, like you're going to want to either read the documentation or talk to our team to get your money's worth out of the subscription, right? Whereas like a dashboard, I can plug in a dashboard and literally start clicking ARAP. Like there's no configuration. It's just ARAP, right? Like, okay, boom, it's in there. So I think giving people a good mix is also key, because they'll download a dashboard or our invoice delivery tool or something like that, and their immediate response, which first impressions are everything, their immediate response is, holy crap, this stuff's easy. I'm going to go download the other 18, right? And then it's like, perfect. You know, I want to get everybody on that top level subscription because they get the most value out of it. And obviously it's advantageous to us as well. So I want all of our clients to be on the full package because I know it unlocks the most automation for them. And obviously internally, selfishly, it's best for us too, from a growth standpoint, because that gives us more money to reinvest in other tools, which I think is, again, a good point to point out. Hey, the more, hey, can you review our stuff? That helps us sell more apps. Hey, can you, buy our unlimited package? All that stuff goes right back into the business to say, okay, here's our next 5 ideas that we're going to create great apps for. And since you bought our top package already, those all come included because you're on our unlimited plan, right? Kind of like, I think people like that as well, right? Like, again, going back to the phone example, you had okay, you can get 1,000 text messages in 1,000 minutes a month, and then everything turned to unlimited, right? It's, you can pay $1 a user, $10 a user, or consumption based or whatever, or here, just pay us one fee. And I don't really want to think about it from an admin perspective. I know you don't want to think about it month to month, what your cost is going to be. Pay us a set cost, use our entire library, right? It's like just literally, go into the library and here, the world's your oyster. Pick what you want, pick and choose. You don't have to have everything, but I'd highly recommend using at least 4 or 5 to get started, right?
So that's all amazing, and I think it comes back to something that we started on this topic was scaling. How do you scale your business? And I know with you started off consulting, and now you're focusing on apps, and you do a lot with productivity and automation. How did you use, or how can someone use productivity and automation to help scale or streamline their business? And the apps that you put into AppSource, I think you touched on it early on, and I just want clarification. Did you develop these and put them in the App Store because of your own need to scale your business, or was it through working with other customers?
I would say a mix. Like, a lot of them came from previous customers, right? So like I said, kind of day one, it's like, okay, what have we done in the past that seemed to be things multiple people asked for, right? So one of the biggest things that I've always seen is automating your AR department, delivering invoices, statements, payment reminders, and all that kind of stuff. That helps me, and that also helps all of our clients, and that's actually our best-selling app right now. Some of the others were 100% client focused, right? Like, we've got some distribution and consolidated shipping tools and things that are going to help in your warehouse. Like, I don't ship anything, so like those don't help me, right? Like, I can't use any of those, but we have a lot of clients that they benefit from. So I would say it truly is a mixed bag. I try to use everything that I can to run our own business. Like, we use our own CRM tool, we use our auto create dimensions, we use our invoice and statement delivery. Like, we're using all of our dashboards, of course. So we're using like as much of the stack as we can, with the exception of the things that like I literally just don't do. Like, I could plug in distribution control center, but it would just sit there because I don't have a warehouse and I have nothing to send to the warehouse, right? Maybe if I start, selling laptops on the side or something, I could start to use it as a demo case. But people just are buying those directly from the software vendor now, or from the hardware vendor now, right? So yeah, I would say again, it's a mix of both. I think what generated our list initially, outside of just things that we had ideas for in the past or had already built for other clients in kind of a light version in the past, was let's take all of the pain points that people express in BC, and a lot of this coming through implementation. So it was always like, yeah, that is a good idea. It doesn't exist. And in the past, we had to create like little one-off like PTE apps. You just install them, you give them to the client maintains them, or they call you to fix them when they have upgrades and stuff like that. And we said, okay, how can we kind of pre-package this and standardize it so that I don't have to have one version for Kris, one version for Brad, one version for Ben, right? I can have a global version that solves 80-90% of what everyone needs. And then, there'll always be people who have the little one-offs. Even a couple of weeks ago, I had somebody talking about one of our apps, and they're like, hey, I want your app to do exactly this based on our business process. And it's like, okay, well, have you thought about your business process this way? Because this is how it fits into our tool. And for the $1,000 a year, you can just use it, get it up and running. I can customize what you want, but it might cost us, $7,000 or $10,000 on top of the license to like get you to exactly where you need. And they take it back, they discuss it, and they're like, you know what? Like, yeah, actually, I think your process is better. Let's go with your process, and we'll just license the tool at the cost and go from there. So I think the big challenge is taking all the recommendations and boiling them down into what is actually going to serve the greater client base and what is more kind of like one-off. And I mean, that's the hardest part, right? Because we get so many good ideas every day, and you want to do them all, but not all of them make sense, right? So it's kind of just taking the best ones, and everybody's going to have a different opinion, right? we might say internally that, that's a one-off, and another partner might say that, okay, like, yeah, we can do it to everybody, and okay, like, that's fine. But you got to stick to your guns sometimes. And again, going back to the finite amount of time, whether you're billing for it or building internally and doing R&D, you only have so many hours in a day. And most of us are already working as many of those hours as we can. So I don't have many.
Oh, you don't have to tell
left.
me. You don't have to tell me. It's Costco is looking better and better every day. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's truly inspirational. It goes back to, I think, the practice that you're talking about is sticking to your core focus, right? It goes back with, like you said, walking away from customers that don't stick to your core, you focusing on what you want to have as part of your business, or what you want to have as part of your portfolio of what you're working with, and let the one-offs walk away, or allow them to do customizations and have extensions maybe atop of your app that may be outside of it, so they get the benefit of using the feature that they want, but your core application still stays true to its focus. So that's it's a great philosophy. I'm inspired, and I appreciate your story and what you're sharing with us today, because it's so powerful beyond the words that you're saying. If what I'm picking up from the meaning behind of what you're saying. So that, now with the productivity and automation, how do businesses, or what, I don't even know where to begin to talk about productivity and automation and how it can enhance implementations and the support of the implementations.
I mean, my general rule of thumb is everybody can benefit from something, right? There's always something you can get better at, right? Whether it's business and your personal life, like, there's always something you can get better at, right? Like, if you're playing basketball and you're shooting 80% from the free throw line, go shoot more free throws and you can get up to 81%, 82%, right? So, like, same in business. If you're going through the motions every day in your AR department, like, just tweak one little thing, right? Even if it's like one less button click, right? Like, one less button click a day over 365 days is going to compound on itself, like, over time. So I always like to use the analogy of, like, compound interest, right? It's like compound investment of either time or productivity or automation, right? If you can automate one small thing a day that saves you 5 minutes, scale that over 365 days, and then scale that over 365 times 5 years. And, like, again, it's, you either get a little bit better every day or a little bit worse every day, right? You're never going to stay the same. So you either improve on what you're doing or you fall behind a little bit. So if you can always be improving like 1% a day on a process or something like that, I think you're so much better off in the long term. And I think one of the big, I call it, like, I don't know if it's a misconception or just like a unpopular opinion, right? But, like, everyone's so focused on their go live date, right? Like, oh, like 1/1/2024, that's the day I'm going to go live, and then all my problems in the world will be solved and everything's going to be perfect in my business. It's like 1/1/2024 is the starting date of something new, right? It's the culmination of all the work we've done over the last year, and it's getting us to the point where we are good to go ahead and say, okay, we can take all the data from over here and put it over here. But if you don't change anything, sales invoices are sales invoices, right? Like, you're still just posting sales invoices and collecting money from your customer until you automate the delivery of those invoices, automate the statements, automate the collections, just like all of that, right? And you don't have to do it all on the same day. Just automate sending the invoices out so you don't have to download them, put them in the email, write up an email body, send it to the customer, right? And that's, I think, why, again, going off of the one tool we have, I always use it as an example. That's why that's our best seller, because it's super easy to implement and it adds so much value to getting those invoices delivered to your customers. It's one less thing you have to worry about and one less risk that you have to say, okay, did we send these out, right? Because one of the biggest things from a collection standpoint I see sometimes is, like, the customer might not have ever gotten their invoice. Like, they don't even know they owe you money, right? So if you can automate that, make sure that they know that they owe you money, right? They're probably more likely to pay. But I think boiling it down into the simplest form is get a little bit better every day. Go live is just a point in time. You have to have, these mini go lives every single week. It's like, okay, let's make this better this week. Let's make this better next week. And kind of breaking it into little pieces makes it a lot less stressful and a lot less time consuming, right? Because nobody can just drop everything they're doing, but everybody could spend 30 minutes a day trying to make something better. And I mean, again, I try to do that in my professional life, in my personal life. I'm a big golfer, as you can see up behind here. So I'm always trying to hit more greens, make more putts, hit straighter drives, right? It's a challenge, but you have to like work towards it. And I'm not going to magically overnight be like, okay, I'm a scratch golfer now because I watched some videos and took some lessons, right? You have to go and do it and actually get your hands on it. You can't just, you can't just watch the videos and all of a sudden be an expert. You have to watch the videos and then go do it hands on. I think that's one of the biggest things. And why I don't want to train people until they're ready to start using. Because if I train them today and they use it in a month, they're going to forget everything. Not to their fault. Like
Absolutely.
I would forget it too. If you showed me something today and I don't use it tomorrow, I'm going to forget it. Like I don't care how smart you are, you're going to forget what somebody talked to you about a month ago. Like I can't remember what I had for dinner 2 nights ago. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you hit on another key point, and we just had the previous podcast to this. We spoke about something similar to that process. It's just, we talked about, making the world a better place, or saving the world, a little every day, or as well as, you eat an elephant, a bite at a time. It's important to take those small, quick wins, and you can gain the improvement. Like you had mentioned in your example, 5 minutes each day for a person adds up over time. A lot of times individuals want to look at, okay, well, I need to save, 8 hours. I need to save a person in a day, or I need to save this. But if you look at it collectively over the span of time, all of these little people that you put together, you're saving that time. So you may not see it at once, but you can get it with those small incremental changes, which allow you to also scale. And your point on customers paying, that's one of those things I don't understand why in 2023, a lot of implementations don't automate statements. They don't automate invoices because, as your point, sometimes people just don't know they owe you money, or if you let them know they owe you money, they're going to pay you, right? If you keep reminding them, keep telling them. Yes, there are those that won't pay. I understand that, but for the most part, it's getting that communication out there so that you're visible. It's extremely important.
And then it just becomes exception management, right? Like, again, there's always going to be people who don't pay on time or just don't want to pay you at all. But then at least it takes your focus narrowed down to just those, rather than before you're having to hit everyone individually, manually. Whereas most of those people in the middle, if you just send them an automatic reminder every week, like even if they delete it this week, they'll put it on their to-do list and then maybe forget. And then next week they'll be like, hey, I forgot again. I need to get this done. Because then they're like, hey, this is continuously overdue. So again, honestly, that's one of the tools I think we could charge 3-4 times the price we're charging now because of how much value it has. But I know it's so valuable. I just want to get it in literally every Business Central instance because I know every single person could benefit from it. So I try to make on that one, the price not be a barrier to entry, because it's like, hey, like here, just download it because it's so useful. Like it can't be free, but try to make it as cost effective as possible. And we've had 0 people say, hey, that's too expensive, which is also a good sign. Anybody who's looked at it has basically bought it. And it's our most reviewed, most downloaded, most feedback on. So yeah, I mean, it's just a huge value add to like literally every company out there. So if you're listening to this, that'll be the only marketing ploy I give. Check out invoice and statement delivery. The rest I'll let people learn for on themselves, right?
You can give as many marketing statements as you want, because as I say time and time again, my goal is for a better Business Central community. I want customers to have better experiences with the Business Central application. I want customers to have better experience with their implementations, because we all benefit in the community from many customers being happy with the implementation, and we can all contribute to that, and we can all reap the rewards of that as well. So market away for those successful things. So we talked about the productivity and automation is maybe saving, 1 click a day, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. What other productivity and automation tips do you have to share?
I think, again, like that's the core of everything that I go back to. But in terms of what companies should focus on, right, it's, in my opinion, the high impact, low effort type of initiatives, right? So what's going to impact us the most and what's going to take us the least amount of time to accomplish, right? Because those are going to give us the highest ROI, right? They're going to, whether that's an investment of time, an investment of money, anything like that. We talked about those quick wins earlier. Like, you want to get those off of your plate because they're going to save you the most time and they're going to be the quickest and easiest to implement. Then those like medium ones where they're medium impact, medium effort, like, okay, we can get to them when we get to them. And then anything that's low impact, high effort, like that's the absolute bottom of the barrel. Like if it's not going to impact my life a bunch and it's going to take me a bunch of time and money, we'll just keep doing what we're doing, right? That's like the bucket of, if it's not broke, don't fix it type mentality, where anything that is going to take you, not much time and is going to provide a lot of value to your business. Those are the things. Like, if, again, everyone's going to have 50 things on their checklist, and I think that's what's overwhelming about it. I would assign everything. If you're looking to do, like, even just an evaluation, you don't even have to implement anything right now. If you're just looking to evaluate everything you're doing on a day-to-day basis, get everybody in your organization and their various roles, like warehousing, distribution, sales, finance, accounting, right? Like all these different departments, have them all jot down like 5 things that are giving them trouble, and then go back and say, okay, is this high, medium, or low impact? And is it high, medium, or low investment, or kind of like level of time that you're going to need to take, right? So again, that would probably be my, outside of tools and what we can do with them. I think the first big thing is putting together that strategy. Because again, like, I've got 50 things on my own list. Like, how do I prioritize those? Okay, what can I get done the quickest, and what's going to have the highest return or the highest value? And then when people kind of come back and they're like, hey, like, we need this done, it's like, okay, here's my matrix. Do you want to pay us to move something up? Or, like, again, everything, you have to have a balance of everything. If you just do everything people want as in the order they come in your email, it's not a great way to manage things, right? So you really have to put priority, the kind of time and impact all into play there when you're looking at those decisions.
Ben, I appreciate that answer. I do have maybe a controversial question, and
all right, let's hear it.
wanted to take your perspective on this, coming from GP. I won't get into the GP world of things because I've never been there. But you coming into Business Central and starting your consulting practice, and
See, it's been so long, Kris, since I've done that. If I would have known you were going to ask a controversial question, I could have gone. So let's start that again. Say it again.
I have a controversial question for you, Ben.
Oh, ominous music.
That's it.
That's it.
I first got the soundboard, and I was like a kid in a candy store. And for the last several episodes, I haven't used it, so I'll use it now. Go ahead, Kris.
Yeah. So, coming into Business Central space and building your practice, a consulting firm would say, and you've shifted your strategy for scalability towards maybe apps. Do you feel that there's eventually going to be a shift where there's going to be fewer consulting and more of ISVs? Because, the ISV app marketplace, app source marketplace is continuing to grow with all the different apps for productivity. Where do you see that in the next 5 years?
Honestly, I see it kind of growing hand in hand, right? Because there's always going to be the people who just want everything to be in BC, right? Like they don't want ISVs, right? Like I've had people who you call and they're like, well, I don't want anything third party because then I have to go maintain like my subscription with Microsoft. I've got to go maintain my subscription with you guys. And then I've got 3 other software vendors that I work with. So I'm very bullish on ISV growth, obviously, as I'm in this position now, and that's where all my investment is, and I did it for a reason. But at the same time, like I don't think growing one is going to slow down the other, right? Because you're always going to need people to implement you always have to implement the core stuff in Business Central, right? So like the ISVs are going to sit on top, like all of our products, they sit on top of all the base tables in Business Central. So like you still have to set up sales and purchasing and GL and all that kind of stuff before our apps will work. I think one of the good examples, I'll keep harping on invoice and statement delivery. Somebody called me last week and they're like, hey, I can't email anything. And I'm like, did you set up like the base emailing in BC? They're like, well, no. I'm like, well, how do the emails get sent out then, right? Like we're plugging into the email engine in Business Central, which again, like, learning on both sides. It's like, okay, hey, if you're going to have a question about that, somebody else might have a question about it in the future. Let's add it into the documentation. So now in the documentation, one of the first things is, hey, make sure you got the emails, the out-of-box email stuff set up, right? Just to save us all time. It's like your frequently asked questions, I guess we can call it. But that is now one of them, right? So I don't want to set up, emails in Business Central. I think that's boring, right? So that's something that like I'll always need, you'll need your associate consultant type folks at the partners to go do, which is fine. Again, like I can do it. And that's the trouble I find myself in sometimes. Like a client calls out, and if I have a free moment and we're on a call, it's like, okay, I'll show you how to set up the emails. But at the end of the day, that should be the consulting firms and the partners, like showing them, hey, these are the prereqs. So, I don't have a hard stance on it, like one way or another, I would say. Obviously, and beneficial for me, I hope the ISVs grow as fast as possible and more than everything else, right? But I don't see that being like realistic, right? You can't, there's no red pill, blue pill solution for, take this one and your life's going to be perfect, or take this one and it's going to be perfect, right? There's a mix, and everybody's different. Like even people I talk to now, they're like, okay, the ISV model might be new to them depending on where they came from. And they're like, okay, I want to access the code and I want to do it. And it's like, you don't have access to the code. This is our IP. Like this is proprietary to what we're doing, right? And they're like, oh, well, I want to be able to see what's going on under the hood. And it's like, if you want to see what's going on under the hood, then you have to create your own standalone app to do all this. And that's going to be really expensive, because I know how long it took us to build these. So I have a very good gauge on how long it would take somebody else to do them. And that's just, I think that's the toughest part that I think I'm seeing, and everybody will see that's an ISV, is just the mindset that people are in. Whether they're, some people, like I said earlier, they just download it and they run with it because that's what they want to do. They're used to downloading things, relying on the software vendor to upkeep it. And then there's other people who are jaded by the fact that they've gotten screwed over in the past, where, software vendors screwed them over. They stopped supporting their app. They did something to wrong the customer, right? And then they bring that to you. And it's like, hey, let's start with a clean slate here. I'm going to do things right by you. We're going to get a great product in. We're going to support our product. We're going to upgrade our product. But unfortunately, like, if somebody, again, goes to the car shop and they screw something up on the oil change, like you're not going to go back there and you're going to ask the next guy who's done a million oil changes right, hey, like, I'm worried about this. And they're like, why are you worried about this? This has never been a problem here, but because I had a problem somewhere else, right? So it's just, again, like building the brand, building the trust. And again, like that's all the hard stuff. That's all the soft skills that, and nobody's going to buy your stuff if they don't trust you. So building the trust is always huge.
We need to have a weekly coffee session, Ben, because this is great. All those points that you hit there as well. It's again, everybody, I think there's a mindset that needs to change, similar to what Kris had talked about. This whole app source thing is still relatively new to the Business Central community, where individuals are buying extensions to a software product. And I've had conversations where, just like you said, it's the IP. I want access to the IP. What happens if you don't support it? What happens if it doesn't work? It's almost the same as if I go and buy software off the shelf or shrink wrap or package software. If a software company decides to no longer support that version, look at Business Central itself. I bought, Nav in 2016. They no longer support it. I'm forced to do something else. They don't give me the IP so I can see how it works. I just know on the surface how it works and what it can do and how I can use it. It's a mindset thing to me. And also the point of not being held prisoner to somebody else's wrongdoings. Just because somebody made a bad decision, which is ends up what it being, they chose somebody to do something and they may have not gone as well as they had hoped, right? There's a point there, because sometimes there's a matter of understanding. I expect someone to do this. It's not that a partner, an ISV, did a poor job. Sometimes that's the case. I will admit that. But also sometimes it's the cases where the customer may have different expectations of what was to be delivered. So somebody has to evaluate that. But you should not be held accountable as a company or a software vendor for somebody else's wrongdoings. See, this is this is great.
It's tough. It's tough. Like
you're ready for coffee weekly?
I've already got way too many cups down today. It's probably I'm talking so fast. Everyone always tells me, I'm surprised you haven't. Usually people are like, slow down, Ben. You're talking too fast. So I try to catch myself every once in a while. But there you go. But
we move up here. So
yeah. I always use the example, like again, like try to make real world examples out of things when people ask you those questions, because that's the easiest way to do it. It's like, if I want to take every picture I took with, my friends last month and post them on Instagram, right? And then Instagram decides that they're going to stop supporting the app and I can't share my pictures anymore, I can't just call them and be like, hey, I want to keep using Instagram. Give me all of your source code for Instagram so I can start my own Instagram, right? And it's like a wild comparison because they're like such a huge company, and I get it. Like, we're a smaller company, right? Like, there's more risk, but like, I don't plan to go out of business. I plan to grow my business. And I always tell people, like, I'm sure, like, worst case scenario, if something happened, somebody would be kind enough to pay me like 5 cents on the dollar for all of our IP. I'm sure, right?
No,
like,
you hit the point. You nailed it. You nailed it, because look at Google. Look at how many things they shut down and people are stuck with using, and they have a different mentality. Again, I think it's just the mindset needs to change in the community, that the apps are software that someone's choosing to use, and someone who's purchasing it can do their due diligence to make the decision if they want to purchase it, if it stops supported. And like you had said, nobody has a business that starts a business and goes, oh, I think I'm going to go out of business next year and no longer support this app.
Yeah. It's funny because, when people ask me that, I'm like, interesting. Like, that's what you're focused on. Like, my focus is, how do I make the app you just bought better? Like, how do we make more money so I can make what you already have better, and you don't have to pay more for it because you already have the subscription and we're adding those functions into for free, right? Which gets me excited and gets 90% of people excited. But then there's always people who are very conservative, and they're just like, they're not implementing or building to grow. They're implementing defensively to not fail, right? And I think that's the big difference. But again, when you download the app off your iPhone, you accept the terms and conditions, and you accept like whatever. If you don't want to accept the terms and conditions, you don't have to buy it. Like, that's that's okay. Like, if you don't want to buy our app, that's okay. It's not for it's not for everybody. I'm not going to try to convince everyone that it is, but I know from our proven track record that it's good for a majority of people who have the same way of thinking about growth and scaling and saving time. So that's what I always tell people. If you're aligned with being more productive, saving time, using your time more wisely, then our apps are great for you. If you want to play defense, then some of them might be, but I'm not here to try to convince you. I'm here to educate you. And if our education leads to saying, yeah, that could be a good fit for our business, then let's get you on a trial, right?
That's great. Well, Ben, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. I know, as we talked about, time is finite, time is valuable, and for you spending it to talk with us and the members of the community and anybody else who is listening, I appreciate it greatly. I know Kris appreciates it as well. We talk about that constantly, how much we appreciate everybody in this community, and speaking with members of the community such as yourself just show how strong the community is, for everybody willing to talk with everybody and work together. But if you would you, we talked about some of the products you have, but if you would you please let us know how somebody could learn more about the great things that you're doing with BC, as well as your apps, and how to get more information on everything that you do?
Yeah, definitely. So again, we publish all of our content publicly on our website and on AppSource. So you're going to find that they're very, they're exactly the same in terms of mirroring each other. So you can either go to bctoolbox.com and that'll direct you to our products page. Every product's listed individually. You can click on a product. You can look at the screenshots, watch the videos, look at the use cases, all that fun stuff, and even download a free trial. And I would honestly start there, and then that free trial will redirect you to AppSource. That will have all the same information. I'll have the videos, the screenshots, the documentation, and the use cases. So start bctoolbox.com. That'll take you to our landing page. And then from there, kind of just start clicking away at what you find interesting. Again, I would recommend starting with invoice and statement delivery and financial dashboard if you're just going to start dabbling into it, but would highly recommend checking out all the other cool tools that we have as well.
All right, great. So that's BC Toolbox. And your story is inspirational. 7 years in BC, starting your own business during 2021, during the year when there was, like you had mentioned, a lot of uncertainty, is truly inspirational. It does take a lot, and I know you must have put in a lot of hard work. So I'm happy to see that it's showing now with what you're doing within the community. I see a lot of the things that you're doing, and I see it everywhere. So I think it's truly inspirational.
Yeah, and I think, again, for anybody who's listening, right, that's trying to do the same thing, it's all about the team. It's not a one-man show. So definitely wouldn't be as successful as we are if we didn't have all the right kind of players. So I can't thank everybody that is on our team enough. Joe, Grant, Matt, Carly, everybody's just absolutely killing it. And it takes a village to get to that point, right? So definitely very thankful for everybody that we've surrounded ourselves with.
All right, great. Thank you again, and we look forward to talking with you soon. And we'll definitely have to have that weekly coffee hour to talk more about.
You'll be at Summit, Ben?
I'm in. Yes, I will be at Summit. Yeah, booth 1750. Stop by.
All right, we'll come see you.
Awesome.
All right.
Looking forward to
Thanks
it. See you
again.
guys there.
All right.
Awesome.
Ciao.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.